It's the Hoffman Show. We are live on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And shout out to everybody watching on YouTube. We started the show actually 30 minutes ago there because we had breaking news and we just couldn't wait to be on the radio, but happy to be on the Team 980 and full bore now. Gave some initial thoughts on the breaking news that Sam Howell has been traded to the Seattle Seahawks, and we're going to hit the ground running with a great analyst who can help talk about this move and also what the Commanders can do with the draft picks they acquired. More from the NFL Network. Charles Davis is with us. Charles, how are you, man?
I mean, you've got stuff just breaking left and right in D.C. My goodness. Sam Howell to the Seahawks. Drew Lock obviously went to the Giants, so there's a need there. And based off of their new head coach in Seattle, Mike McDonald's comment about, is Geno Smith your starter and not committing? Sam Howell sounds like he's got a chance to go in and compete for the number one job.
I mean, it's wild to watch the Seattle-Washington stuff happening. McDonald obviously was a candidate here. Then Bobby Wagner leaves Seattle, comes here, obviously DQ's history. Let me just ask you this, Charles. Like, in terms of Washington, the return to get, it's really two pick swaps, but to get another top 100 pick in this draft, that 78th pick they get in return for Sam Howell, what do you make of that return for Sam?
I think it's great return. And, you know, nowadays, I mean, you've seen what some of these deals have been, right? Like, I was just reading one, and it's not the same because it's not a quarterback, but even the quarterback market is not as big as people would think, right? Malik Collins has been a good player, right? Defensive tackle, Dallas, Houston, the whole deal, right? He just makes a move. San Francisco makes a trade for him. Did you see what they gave up?
I actually missed this one. They won't stop signing players. I can't keep up with anything else, Charles.
I know, it's hard to do, right? I only caught it just because it flashed across my email. And the 49ers give up for a starting defensive tackle, which is, you know, a good commodity in this league, one of their 2 sevens this year.
Wow.
This is what I'm talking about. You know, you know what it's like in the offseason before all these things start happening, right? When you're sitting around talking with people, they always talk about, well, you know, you think they'll get a 1 for him? You know how hard it is to get a 1 for anyone anymore?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's difficult. People think it's easy, right? That's why you hear the Carolina fans lamenting that they could have gotten 2 1s from Los Angeles last year. It was reported for Brian Burns. This year they get a 2nd and a 5th because the market changes and times change, et cetera, et cetera. But the idea of giving up 2 1s for Brian Burns, I'm still not sure I actually believe that was even on the table. But that's what it's like nowadays. Starting players are moving. We think the value is going to be huge. It's not going to be what you think it is. So to me, to get a pick at 78, I think is a big deal for Washington as they continue to build.
Charles Davis, NFL Network, with us here on the Hoffman Show. Of course, Charles, a huge part of NFL Network's draft coverage will be, which will be live from Detroit at the end of April. Make sure you're watching all the path to the draft stuff, and then obviously Charles and company on set out there in Detroit. Charles, for you, as you've scouted this draft, how deep is this draft? Because I know in talking to a bunch of people out in Indy, it seems like some people think it's kind of a 90, 100 player draft. Like, where to you is kind of the, I don't want to necessarily call it a cliff. Maybe you will go as far as to call it a cliff. Where's that level off in the 2024 draft pool?
Yeah, for me, it goes a little bit higher than 90 to 100. I think there are more players in it than that. I think that it gets borne out pretty much every year when we go back and look at who became a player, who wasn't. Because remember, I'm going to bring into the pool of guys who don't get drafted, which means the pool was deeper than we thought. But those guys, for whatever reason, didn't pass the test or somehow got overlooked. You know, we have it all the time, right? So I think it's bigger than that. You know, people want to talk about it getting to a certain number. Look, we are really deep in receivers, and we'll say that probably between now and when football goes back to being a true run-first game played between the hashes, which I don't know if we'll ever get back to, right? I mean, it's just the way the game is going. Offensive linemen, really deep. You know, running backs, deeper than what people give it credit for, but because there's not a true first-round runner, everybody goes, linebackers are going to get the same thing. You're probably not going to get a first-round guy, but guess what? There are players to be found there. So I find the pool to be deeper than that. So if people want to put it, as you said, 90 to 100, I take it up closer to 150.
Okay. I think it's also the funny part about even the folks who will go, it's 90 to 100. They won't agree on who the 90 or 100 are.
No.
Which then pushes it to, 150 easy of, oh, yeah, that guy's in my 90. Well, he's not in mine. Okay, well, let's add him to the list. That's the nature of scouting.
So great. Thank you so much for saying that, because you just made one of the best points that we're going to need to keep repeating. So whoever's in charge of your show, please cut that right there and keep it, clip it, save it, and use it, because I'm endorsing what you said in a big way. And now here's what I'm going to tell you. When you sit down to do your mock drafts, right, and I have to do a certain number, okay? I'm contracted to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Before I started doing it and I started talking with people at the Combine and other places, just what you said came out to be true. If I was going to say, okay, here are my 32 guys that are going into the mock draft, when you ask different people, is he a first rounder? Is he a first rounder? Is he going to get picked in the first round? Is he going to get picked in the first round? By the time I was done, it's probably double that. And there can't be 64 guys in the first round, right? There's only 32. But when you talk to people, just what you just said right there comes ringing true all the time. So when people tell you 90 to 100, as you said, who are you asking? If you take everyone's 90 to 100, that pool's a lot bigger than what people have given it credit for. Same thing about who are going to be the 32 guys that go in the first round. I easily got 60-plus names. Easily. Where they're like, oh, yeah, I think he can go in the first round. But there's only 32. There's only 32 that are going to go. Who are they?
Right.
We'll find out come draft night.
Yeah, it's funny, too, you mentioned you kind of realize just how many there are during mock drafts. So we do some on our podcast, and I do it with former NFL player Logan Paulson is my co-host.
Yeah.
And Logan, I wake up at this time of year to about 2 or 3 film clips a morning of Logan. You got to check out this guy. Watch how he spins it in this game. Watch this.
Right.
And so we're doing our latest one just after the Combine, and he's like in disbelief at the mock draft simulator we're using for the non-commanders picks. He's like, there's no way it goes like that. There's no way these guys will all be here as we look at those early second rounders. And I'm like, if you say that every time we do this, inevitably some of these guys will be, because you can't, someone's got to fall. And so it is funny how that tends to happen, which is why every single year the draft feels often, I think, crazier if you just look at a lot of mock drafts than obviously if you talk to people within the league.
And I'll put a cap on it for you and I, because I know we probably want to move on.
Yeah.
Here's the deal with that. There are going to be 32 players that go in the first round. Not all 32 had a first-round grade as a consensus across the league. That's always the kicker to this thing. When you're said and done and you put guys up on your boards in 32 different draft rooms, there will not be 32 players that have first-round grades in almost any draft room. But 32 have to be picked because that's how it goes. So you're a first-rounder when you get picked, but you may not have had a first-round grade. And that's why it's funny. It's fun for us to have this conversation. And if Logan wants to blow up my thing with film clips on different guys, please give him my number. I need all the help I can get.
I will pass that along to Logan. I'm sure he would love to. Just be careful what you wish for. That's all.
Hey,
that's all I'm saying.
I know that feeling, but you know something? I'd rather weed through it than not have enough. And tell him, please, that guy from Rose-Hulman that's going to go in the 7th round that we don't see coming, I'd love to have that film clip on him early, please.
Love it. Charles Davis, NFL Network, is our guest. And, Charles, as much as we talk about the depth, I think you know that the fans that are listening to this show here in D.C., they only really care about one pick, and that's at number 2.
Number 2.
Where are you at on the quarterbacks behind Caleb Williams, presuming that he goes to Chicago at 1?
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, the crew, making the decisions up there. Martin Mayhew's still there. The whole deal about who's going to be that number 2. But I think, to me, it's down to 2 guys, because let's just play the game very easily. Based on every smoke signal we've got going right now, doesn't it feel like it's Caleb Williams and Chase at this point? Right? It's the Bears are going to take Caleb Williams, and off we go from there.
Yeah,
That's what it feels like. I don't know that it's true, but I have a hard time believing it's not true. And I always have an adage about this time of year. You know what it is? Whoever's been the number 1 pick, the purported number 1 pick for a long time, like Andrew Luck was and Trevor Lawrence was and all that, for like 2 years, they're going to be the number 1 pick. About this time of year, we start nitpicking them. Mm-hmm. And we bring somebody up to challenge them, 1 or 2 players. Okay, for Andrew Luck, it was Robert Griffin. I forgot who it was for Trevor Lawrence. You know what I'm saying, right?
Right.
And right now, what should be happening is we should be talking about Drake May, or Jaden Daniels being the number one pick, are you really hearing it? I'm really not. Like, this is one time we're not getting that type of a deal. So let's just do it at 2, because at 2, that's when the debate begins. Do you like Daniels? Do you like Drake May? I've heard a little bit of the J.J. McCarthy thing jumping in later. I don't feel like it's a full-scale, full-throated deal. I think it's Daniels and Drake May. They're going to have to figure that out. But I've been saying, and I think it's something I'll probably continue to say, Dan Campbell comes in with defensive coordinator chops. What drives defensive coordinators crazy? Quarterbacks who can truly run the football. Not just scramble and catch a first down here and there. I'm talking about can beat you with their legs. That's Jaden Daniels. I'm not saying Drake May can't run it. He can. But Daniels is as close to what Lamar Jackson brings to you running as you can get without being Lamar Jackson, because he's not Lamar.
Right.
But he's as close as we've had since Lamar. And that's why I think Dan Quinn, when it's all said and done, when Adam Peters looks at him and says, which one for you, he would say Jaden Daniels, because as a defensive coordinator, that's who hurt you most. A lot of defense coordinators hire offensive coordinators who run offenses that drive them crazy trying to prepare for. See how it works? That's me overthinking it. That's me trying to get into the mind of Dan Quinn. But it's also experience and education. I've been doing these games for a long time. I've sat with defensive coordinators, offensive coordinators. I've heard what they've talked about. What I've just told you is a universal with defensive coordinators. They hate quarterbacks who can truly run the football, meaning I'd rather have him on my team than chase him around.
Charles Davis, NFL Network analyst, of course, also does the play-by-play with Ian Eagle, our good friend on CBS. Ian told me, by the way, Charles, that your 70s and 80s TV show knowledge is undefeated.
Well, it's actually defeated by him.
Oh,
that's the best part. Is he puts it? I love how he slaps that on me, and I love it. I appreciate it. But I've not been able to hit one over the net that he hasn't returned yet. So I'm still waiting. I'm still searching. I'm still looking. I've got to come up with that one obscure TV show that one night he may have missed. But so far, everything I hit at him, it comes back with pace.
He's a smart cookie, that Ian Eagle. Smart.
It's hard to get past him. And by the way, big congrats to my partner as he gets him ready to do his first Final Four for CBS. It's well deserved. And Jim Nance is a legend and a Hall of Famer, and he retired at the end of last year. They could not have made a better selection to take over than I am.
Yeah, I'm into that. All right, a few more minutes here quickly with Charles before we let him go on his merry way, get back to the tape, or perhaps just enjoying a nice, lovely afternoon. So I think that your perspective on the D coordinator side of this is so clear and pristine and appreciated because I think you're totally right with what drives defensive coordinators crazy, because it's the thing they can't plan for. But I think, Charles, one thing that I have a theory I kind of want to run by you that in some way like runs counter to that, and it's something that I've become more aware of through this draft process, and I'm curious your thoughts on it, which is that we often think of the floor and ceiling of quarterbacks as the opposite of what we should. In other words, we think of guys who can run as having higher ceilings, and guys who are more in the Drake May build as having higher floors. And I actually think it's the opposite. I think a guy like Daniels is going to be able to run around in the NFL no matter if he can throw or not. And a guy like Drake May, who maybe is like Justin Herbert-y, with the arm strength and the platform, off platforms and all that kind of stuff. Like, those are the guys that wind up being your Hall of Famers, because the ultimate version of that is a guy like Mahomes who can make any throw from any angle at any time. What do you make of kind of that idea of where we put floors and ceilings and what attributes should be attached to those types of things, specifically with quarterbacks?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent theory. I really do. And I go back to what I've said about Dan Quinn, and I stand by it, because I do feel like I understand what coaches think and how they view things and what drives them or makes them nuts at times. And I do think that Daniels coming out now versus May, that's what would keep DQ awake at night a little bit more. Defensive coordinators feel like the guys who play from the pocket they could deal with better, because it doesn't have that instant sting. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
3rd and 8, Daniels hot foots it for 10. 3rd and 8, and he has to deliver from the pocket, and he completes a pass for 17, for some reason it doesn't hurt as much. I mean, I'm just telling you, in their minds, we did everything the way we were supposed to. Boy, he made a heck of a throw. But when everything breaks down and he runs, it drives him crazy. But back to your theory, it makes perfect sense, because if you line up the guys who are in the Hall of Fame and we're saying are going to the Hall of Fame, what do they do better than anything else? They deliver the ball on time, on schedule, from the pocket. Doesn't mean they can't move. Moving is part of it. Is it a slide step to your left to create the opening and throw the football? Is it moving out 2-3 steps away to your right and throwing a little bit on the run and hitting someone? Is it creating that extra little bit of time? Then you plant your feet and throw the dart. Having some movement's a big deal, okay? All the greats had enough movement to keep plays alive just for whatever they needed. Now, Tom Brady wasn't going to scramble around and do a whole lot to keep it alive that way. But did you remember anyone with any better pocket movement?
Yeah.
Montana with his pocket movement and a little bit of footwork. Steve Young, much more of the runner. We can go on all day. But at the end of the day, where do they deliver from? Where do they make the plays? Where do they beat you? Most times, being able to throw the football, whether it's a little bit on the run, but mainly being able to step up and make that throw when it was necessary. So I think your theory holds a lot of credence. And I've heard all this stuff about Drake May, and I'm doing my work on him, what have you. I think the kid's a winner. I think the kid's a big-time player. I love the way he throws the football. And if anybody wants to talk about Herbert being a pure pocket passer, I always tell them, go back and turn on the Rose Bowl, Oregon-Washington, his last game, and watch how many times he made plays with his legs and running the football. They gave Oregon a great opportunity in that game. So, I don't think they can't do these things. But, boy, him throwing the ball is way better for his team than him taking off and running it.
No doubt. Charles Davis, NFL Network's NFL draft coverage all month long leading into the end of April when they will be live from Detroit with every single pick. Charles, this was fantastic. Hope we can do it again. Thanks so much for the time. It was great to see you briefly in Indianapolis a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it's great to see you as well. And remember what I told you. Thank you for your patience there. We're sorry we weren't able to do it as we were supposed to. And I meant what I said. We owed you double. So if you want to hit again anytime, I'm available. Thanks a lot for your time and continued success to you.
Thank you, Charles. That's Charles Davis with us here on The Hoffman Show. What a start for us here on the radio. Again, we've actually been going since about 4:30 live on YouTube because the breaking news of the day, Sam Howell and the Commanders no longer together. The Commanders have traded the starting quarterback from last year to the Seattle Seahawks. Obviously, there's a ton of draft implications, so we kind of started with Sam and picked things up on the draft with Charles and Anthony. He said it on the radio. He told me that in person in Indy, but he said it on the radio. He owes us another one. I don't think he owes us. I think that's he's being very kind. He is committed to another one. So the tackle class is something I would love to talk to him about. Obviously, Charles knows DB play as well as anybody, so we'll get to all that stuff in the next couple of weeks, but Ann, are you ready to get in on the Sam Howell part of this?
Can't wait.
All right. So Ann will hop into the discussion, and so will you. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. Your thoughts as Sam Howell traded to the Seahawks in a gigantic pick swap that nets the Commanders yet another top 80 pick in the 2024 NFL Draft.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.